I mean, I can do it like this if you prefer. I can do that if you prefer. You prefer. Okay, great. Well, you asked for an introduction. Okay, so there we go. So I'm going to talk about what is an entrepreneurial mindset, but also try to talk about how this is linked to happiness and well-being. So I think that that's some new content for a lot of you, and I think the implications for life design are pretty obvious. I've got a lot to cover today, so slow me down if I talk too quickly. Wenn ich zu schnell sprechen, Sie müssen etwas sagen, ja? I'm going to talk about what is entrepreneurship, what's an entrepreneurial mindset, what specific beliefs and attitudes I believe are part of an entrepreneurial mindset and why. I think that's some pretty new stuff. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what happiness and well-being is, and why an entrepreneurial mindset might lead to PERMA. And in particular, then, how do you teach this? And I was asked to give a quick demonstration of the Articulate Storyline online learning platform that I'm using. So I got a lot to cover, and I'm going to try to get it all in. So slow me down if you need anything. Why am I interested in this topic? Well, first of all, I'm teaching the largest entrepreneurship course in the world starting in 2.5 months here in the fall. So I'm writing the textbook entirely myself. I'm doing many of the videos myself. And because it's going to be such a highly scalable course with so many students, like how do you actually teach that? Another big reason why I'm so interested in this topic is there's a real crisis in mental health in today's youth. University, like over 50% of university students are currently diagnosed with a mental disorder. Over half of university students, at least in North America, are currently undergoing medical attention for a diagnosed medical disorder. I'm sorry, did somebody ask a question or? Okay, sorry, we're getting some terrible feedback. Can I ask everybody to mute their microphones, maybe? Okay, good. I think it's stopped now. Great. Yeah, let's talk about the mental health crisis in today's youth. Over a third of my students have actively contemplated suicide in less than the last month. A third. 1 in 4 would say 1 in 4 would say that they have been so depressed in the last month that they couldn't get out of bed for an entire day. This is a crisis. And so this is going to be one of the first university courses that these students will have ever had. It's a new mandatory required course in the curriculum for the largest business school in Canada. And they're leaving home for the first time. They're joining university for the first time. And they're not going to get any kind of help on their mental health in their marketing class. They're not going to get any help in their law class or HR class. So I think that for a lot of students, this might be the only university course they'll ever have that touches on the subject of mental health, anxiety, depression, suicide, substance abuse, and how an entrepreneurial mindset can help empower them to combat these problems. My primary field of research is entrepreneurship education. And so that's why I'm interested in these topics. I've also written a book previously on entrepreneurial career and life design, which is why I've been talking with Bettina, Barbara, Georg, and this group here. And I did want to have a shout out to Georg. I loved your System 1, System 2 stuff. That was so excellent. Thank you very much. That really help solidify some important ideas in my mind and take me to the next level. So thank you. So I'm in repaying Georg for his wonderful presentation. I'm contributing this to the overall discussion. So what is entrepreneurship? Well, it's a revolutionary approach to dealing with uncertainty, risk, ambiguity, and change. That almost all university courses are based on the planning-based mindset versus this new entrepreneurial way of thinking around search. So planning, you have known goals in a fairly predictable, stable environment, and you can control the means to achieve these goals if you're a manager with budget. And this is how we teach virtually every business course in the entire curriculum. It's kind of like farming. You know you want tomatoes, so you plant tomato plants, you control the sun and water, maybe you build a greenhouse, you add some pesticide, and you always get what you plan for. You want tomatoes, you plant tomato plants, you get tomatoes. Search is more like hunting. You pick a desirable direction to test in, but the environment is unpredictable, uncertain, changing. And so you have to look for weak signals and then pivot or persevere. And rather than causal-based reasoning on the planning-based side, we use effectuation. This is Saravathi's groundbreaking work on effectuation theory. The only thing you can really control is your own time, attention, and effort. And so what we know about entrepreneurial searching is this idea of agile, lean, design thinking, rapid prototyping, iterating, and things like that. Rather than controlling a lot of resources, you start with only what you have, your bird in the hand principle. You start with your own time and effort, your own human capital, social capital, and character. And you can control your own attention and focus with proactivity and things like that. Focus on customers, not competitors. That's the crazy quilt principle. Continuous learning and improvement. This is what we know about entrepreneurship, especially on the search-based side of things. And a lot of this comes out of effectuation theory. So, this kind of sort of changes the way that we view what entrepreneurship is, that it's not just starting up a business, but it's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of being. And this is something that's fundamental to the human spirit. And you can apply that to starting up a new business. You can apply that to being an intrapreneur, being entrepreneurial inside a company. You can apply that to social change making, active citizenry, political activism, social causes, community change making, but you can also be entrepreneurial towards your own life. You can look at yourself in an entrepreneurial way and say, how can I change who I am to have a happier life with greater well-being? And I call that personal empowerment, or sometimes we call that life design. So I published a bunch of papers on this, on what is entrepreneurship. And this is really the holistic philosophy of entrepreneurship that's been embraced in the EntreTime, the Connect program, and some of the other Train the Trainer programs in Europe. So here's a little quote from the course. Entrepreneurship's not just a business discipline, but it's a different way of seeing, thinking, and acting. And this is what enabled human beings to have a brighter world. Here's that same idea embedded in the mission of my department, that we empower students with this entrepreneurial philosophy that they can apply to these 4 major domains: their own lives, their jobs, their communities, or their own new ventures. So the course is not primarily concerned with starting a business. It's about learning how to think and act entrepreneurially. Everybody on board with that? Any questions so far? So this is kind of sort of what is entrepreneurship. Okay. So if it's not about starting a business and it's a required course for all students in marketing, finance, accounting, HR, information technology, retail, law, kind of across the entire business school, it's really to encourage students to explore the Toronto Metropolitan University entrepreneurship ecosystem. We've got the largest entrepreneurship ecosystem in the world. We've got 10 on-campus incubators. We've got our own VC fund. We've got our own angel network. We start up over 300 to 400 new companies a year. One of our incubators, the DMZ, which I co-founded, has helped companies raise over $5 billion in financing and has created over 5,000 jobs. So we've got a big, big ecosystem. And I'm trying to encourage students to just get involved. Like, welcome to university. This is kind of a commuter school. Students don't live on campus. They live in Toronto. They commute to school, and then they go home to hang out with their high school friends. So this course is really about getting them involved in their university. So to help them build their interests and strengths, build networks to create an engaging university experience, and then use some of the entrepreneurial tools to either do a potential side hustle, change-making project, or new venture of some sort. And then to search, play, do those entrepreneurial things to discover their ikigai, or what brings them perma. And I'll talk about that later. For those of you who don't know, this is the ikigai framework. It's not just about doing what you're good at and what you love, but it's about doing what the world needs and what you could be paid for. And if you bring all this together, this is happiness and well-being, a reason for being. So this is one of the frameworks I use in the course. So we know entrepreneurship is about, there's knowledge, there's the head, the hand, and the heart. There's like tools and methods, and the course has to teach a little bit about this, but it's a new course. And so I didn't want to change any of the courses that come after this, that talk about entrepreneurial tools and methods. And we've got 75 different entrepreneurship courses at our university, 75 different entrepreneurship courses. And I didn't want anybody to have to redo any of their courses, because now students have this new course. It's about skills and competencies, as you know, from like the EntreComp framework, but also there's this mindset, what we call entrepreneurial attitudes, the mindset. So what's the mindset? I don't think this is controversial for anybody here in this particular room, but there are cognitive antecedents to behaviors and emotions. And this is a complete repudiation of the determinists and the behaviorists, who say that you're controlled by like your Pavlov's dog, or you're controlled by fate, destiny, the stars, God, genes, the color of your skin, your socioeconomic conditions. None of that is true. None of that is true. What you think influences what you do. What you think influences how you feel. And the social cognitive theory is the primary psychological framework. And this is, you know, Bandura with his self-efficacy thing. He's the big social cognitive theory, a giant. Theory of planned behavior, theory of reasoned action. Maslow and the humanist psychologists are all part of the social cognitive theory. Humans are not the helpless pawns of fate, destiny, God, genetics. We have agency and free will. And I talk about this a lot in one of my most recent publications, Empowering Students for Future Work and Productivity, which is published in Public Affairs Quarterly. So there's no such thing as an entrepreneurial personality. You're not controlled by how you were born. You've heard about the trait school. And, you know, we've spent decades trying to look at, you know, who can be an entrepreneur. And what we've discovered is there is no entrepreneurial personality. It just doesn't exist. That was just 20 years of research that turned out to be nothing. Social cognitive theory is the most robust and valid predictor of human behavior. But unlike personality, mindset is changeable. Mindset is changeable. So that's the first thing about an entrepreneurial mindset, is to know it's about what you think. It's about the cognitive antecedents to behaviors, and that it's changeable. So the primary structural thing is the theory of planned behavior, or the theory reasoned of action. This is the most well-researched model in the entire field of entrepreneurship. Your beliefs affect your attitudes, affect your intent, which affect your actions. Your beliefs and attitudes are primarily subconscious. Most people don't know what their beliefs and attitudes are, especially their core beliefs. But as you move to the right-hand side, you start to become more consciously aware of what your goals and intent is, what you want to do, and that your emotional feedback, your happiness, is based on the harmony of all of these things. So, some foundational considerations. We have agency and free will, and we can understand and choose and influence these beliefs using techniques adopted from cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, mindfulness, meditation, not mediation, and yoga, introspection, goal setting, habit formation, and things like that. So this course uses a lot of books. I've read over 50 books in the last year around, all of Beck's works on cognitive behavioral therapy, all of Dave Burns' books on feeling good, feeling great, all of Seligman's books on flourishing, learned optimism, happiness and well-being. I've read a lot of stuff about this whole thing. So an entrepreneurial mindset incorporates positive beliefs and attitudes. And so entrepreneurial attitudes like curiosity, like you can't be curious about the world around you if you believe that you live in a world of pain and suffering and malevolence where the world is rigged against you. You can't be resilient and have empathy if your belief is that you're helpless and that the fate or stars control your destiny and things like that. So these entrepreneurial attitudes are based on positive beliefs. And here's a list of some of these positive beliefs. I'm going to talk about these in a bit more detail. But because of that, the course incorporates these concepts, methods, and tools from positive psychology and CBT. So here's some of the books I just mentioned. Now, interesting, things like self-esteem, self-efficacy, internal locus of control, optimism, resiliency, curiosity, growth mindset, these are all highly, highly correlated with happiness and well-being. So you need these things to be entrepreneurial. But if you build these things, they also coincidentally happen to also help you build happiness and well-being. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail here. So let's talk a little bit more about happiness and well-being. And this is a fairly well-researched topic in the last 20 years. There's now like 20 journals on happiness studies. There's been a revolutionary shift since the introduction of positive psychology in the early 2000s. Previously, all psychology was really, how do you help people who are depressed? How do you help people with schizophrenia? How do you help people with post-traumatic stress disorder? How do you help people like overcome trauma? Positive psychology says, well, rather than helping people go from -8 to -2, we're going to help people go from +1 to +10. So this is kind of a major fundamental shift in the whole field of psychology, and there's been a lot of happiness things. So, like any new field, there's a lot of contradictions, but basically what I can say is that there's one component of happiness is called hedonic happiness, which is basically high positive emotions and low negative emotions, or what psychologists call affect. Happiness is also bundled in with this thing called eudaimonic happiness, which is basically Aristotle's satisfaction with life. And that especially driven by Seligman and some of these other people, well-being is a broader concept, which is kind of the same thing as PERMA. A combination of happiness plus well-being, that you've got your positive emotions, but you also have engagements, also known as flow. You have relationships, meaning and achievement in your life. And so when I talk about happiness and well-being, I'm really referring specifically to PERMA. And there's a scale for how to measure PERMA. Happiness is something you can have in your own head. Like you can be alone in a room in a jail cell and kind of sort of have happiness. Well-being is a broader concept. You have to actually have positive relationships. You have to actually do things in the world around you. So true well-being is a broader concept. I've been criticized by my colleagues for saying, who are you to tell students they should be happy? You shouldn't be teaching students to be happy. This sets them up for failure. Life isn't about happiness. And I say, no, you're absolutely wrong. Happiness is good. It leads to longevity. It leads to health. It leads to positive life outcomes. Happier people are wealthier, healthier. They live longer. They have better relationships. Happiness is a good thing from top to bottom. There is no bad aspect of being happy. And it forms the foundation for well-being. And in the same way that a positive cycle of happiness generates more happiness and well-being, a negative cycle of depression and anxiety leads to more negative life outcomes. So I want my students to be successful. I want to combat depression and anxiety. So it is my position that happiness is a good in the world. I know that that is controversial. Some portion of happiness is genetic, about 40%. Some percentage is weakly and temporarily related to life circumstances. But by and large, wealth, marriage, religion, success, job things do not lead to happiness. You've got this thing called hedonic adaptation, which means you get used to it. You get a little bit more money, you spend it. You get used to it. You eat a lot of ice cream cones, you get sick of ice cream cones after a while. Hot dogs are good when you have one of them, but when you had 100 hot dogs, you start to get sick of hot dogs. So the primary source of happiness is based on your beliefs and your attitudes, and this is changeable. This is all changeable through therapy and through positive psychology and through mindfulness and things like that. And so I'm going to show you where these things specifically come from. The science of cognitive behavioral therapy shows that there are 5 primary major negative dysfunctional beliefs. The reason why they're dysfunctional is because they lead to poor function. They lead to bad life outcomes. That's why they're dysfunctional. They're bad for you. First one is negative self-worth. This is thoughts of worthlessness and unlovability. I'm bad, I'm evil, I'm a sinner, nobody loves me, nobody likes me, I'm ugly, I'm fat, there's something wrong with me. And these come right out of the literature. Like, I didn't make any of these up. These are heavily studied. These are the 5 major negative beliefs. Second one is helplessness or incompetence. There's nothing I can do. I'm a failure and there's nothing I can do. I can't get out of this hole I'm in. Another major dysfunctional belief is this negative view of other people. Other people are rotten, they're scoundrels, they're going to hurt me, or they're worthy of disdain. I can harm them, I can kill them, I don't care about other people. And there's 2 aspects of negative worldview. There's the malevolent worldview, that the world is bad, dangerous, a place of suffering and torment. We are cast out of the Garden of Eden into a place of suffering for punishment for our poor behaviors, and that things are going to turn out badly. All 5 of these things result in bad outcomes. In contrast, the 5 primary positive entrepreneurial beliefs are the exact opposite. Instead of worthlessness, we have self-esteem. Instead of helplessness, we have self-efficacy. Instead of negative view, we have empathy. We care about other people. Instead of a malevolent worldview, we have a benevolent worldview. Things turn out well. Instead of things turning out badly, being pessimistic, we're optimistic. And so I've got these scales, if you will, where worthwhileness goes from worthless on one side to positive core self-evaluation, positive self-esteem on the right-hand side. You go from helpless to having a high self-efficacy. You go from thinking other people are bad, hurtful, or stupid to that they're interesting and things like that. I will note that at the far right extreme of each scale is a bad thing. If you think you have too much worth, you're a narcissist. If you think you're too amazing, you're overconfident. If you think people are too wonderful and amazing, you have unconditional love, which is a recipe for tragedy and suffering in your life. On the worldview side of things, it goes from a malevolent universe to a benevolent universe. But if you think everything is too rosy, you've got rose-colored glasses and you're a Pollyanna, and that's not a good thing either. This is where entrepreneurs are like, oh, all my dreams are going to turn real. Maybe not. Maybe not. And then on the control side of things, you go from an external locus of control to an internal locus of control with free will and agency over your life. But at the too far extreme, there are things you just don't control. You don't control death. You don't control sunrises. You don't control other people. So that there's this sweet spot, kind of Aristotle's golden mean, as you will. Okay. So here are the 7 specific entrepreneurial attitude. So I talk about the 5 specific positive entrepreneurial beliefs that are embedded in my course and that I teach. Here's the 7 specific positive entrepreneurial attitudes. This is not a comprehensive list. These are just the major ones. None of these are surprising, but some of these are highly correlated with happiness. In particular, growth mindset, resiliency, and self-leadership. Very highly correlated with happiness. Creativity, co-creation, and play, not so much. Proactivity, yes. Internal locus of control, highly correlated with happiness. So from cognitive behavioral therapy, we know that you can eliminate negative beliefs and the cognitive distortions they cause. And there's a process, the ABCs of CBT. You identify what the negative belief is, you challenge that negative belief, and then you replace it through positive self-talk. So you think to yourself, oh, if I fail this test, my parents are going to kill me. But you challenge that belief. You say, wait a minute. That's one of the 10 cognitive distortions. That's an overgeneralization, and that's magnification. I'm going to challenge that. Well, my parents actually love me. My parents are not really going to murder me. And then you replace this. Rather than saying, oh, my parents are going to kill me if I fail this thing, you replace this negative belief with, my parents love me and will support me, but I should try harder. Things like that. This is a difficult course, but I'm going to learn this course by implementing a growth mindset. So this is the process from cognitive behavioral therapy by which you identify and eliminate negative beliefs. But you can eliminate them because they're irrational. They're just not true. When you say, oh, the world's going to end, that's not true. The world is not going to end. That's an irrational negative belief. All negative beliefs are fundamentally irrational. All negative beliefs are fundamentally just not true. And so you can talk yourself out of them by just pointing out what really is true. The trouble with positive beliefs is you can't talk yourself into them. You can't say, oh, I'm a good student, unless you actually do all the work, go to all the classes, and get good grades. So you can talk yourself out of negative beliefs because they're a lie, but you can't talk yourself into positive beliefs unless you take the actions required to make them true. And so this is new on the face of the planet, I would say. This is not supported by the literature. I see no support for this in the existing literature. This is my theory, if you will. This is what I'm proposing, that in order to build positive beliefs, you have to take action. You can't just sit around and dream about having a good world. You actually have to do stuff. And so I use the pedagogical pyramid to show that your higher level mindset, beliefs, and attitudes are based on your lower level actions. And so I teach all of these tools at the lower level, like business model canvas, business model U, how to do fly on the wall interviews. I teach entrepreneurial methods like the IDEO, Stanford Design School stuff, the Double Diamond Pyramid, value proposition design, stuff like that. I teach the entrepreneurial principles and things like bird in the hand, crazy quilt, and stuff like that. And so there are tools, methods, and processes in the course that I cover as well. So basically what the course is about is to get involved in their university, the Toronto Metropolitan University, get involved and use this to build your character, human capital, and social capital. That's your bird in the hand. That's the only thing you have. When you're 20 years old, you don't have any money. You don't have a lot of skills. All you've got is your human and social capital. Build that human and social capital. Explore the possibility of starting your own startup or side hustle using the business model you canvas, and then go out and try to discover your ikigai. Go out and do fun stuff. Go out and play and go meet some cool people, get involved. The course itself is a blended learning, flipped classroom, experiential pedagogy based, blended learning because there's an asynchronous component, experiential learning because it's primarily about doing, flipped classroom because they have to do the asynchronous stuff first and then come into class having already done that. So this is the way almost every university class in North America goes. There's usually 3 hours per class. Usually it's a 3-hour lecture. Because this is a blended learning class, there's 1 hour of asynchronous content using Articulate Storyline, which I'm going to show you in a minute. There's 1 hour in a large classroom where Steve Gedeon gets to pretend to be Tony Robbins. I get to be a motivational speaker. I'm thinking about buying laser lights and a fog machine. Just kidding. And then there's a 1 hour lab class where it's taught by a different professor in groups of 45 students or more. Sorry, of only 45 students. They get extra credit for being involved in extracurricular activities, and that's tracked at our university through what's called TED points. We're the Ted Rogers School of Management. They get TED points for doing, by joining a student club, going to a workshop, learning a new skill, getting a badge. They get TED points for. All incoming students are put into a group of 45 students called a TED Pack. They go to all the same classes together and they meet for social events and things like that. So mine is the only course that's kind of like taught kind of in harmony with these TED Packs. There's 8 weekly assignments. They either get a 0 or full marks. Their weekly assignments must be grammatically perfect or they get a 0. If you can't figure out how to use artificial intelligence and Grammarly for free, you shouldn't be at university. You shouldn't be here. You should go take some upskilling courses. This was a fairly major, highly negotiated aspect of this course, that in order to make room for this new course in our core curriculum, they had to get rid of another course, and the course they decided to get rid of was the communication course. So I said, I can't teach students English in 1 semester on top of entrepreneurship and cognitive behavioral therapy and all this other stuff. There's a real problem in North American universities because of budget reductions that we're increasingly getting international students who don't speak English. And they kind of make it through 4 years without ever actually learning how to write. And I think that it's really important to set them off on a good foundation to say, if you're going to be successful in university, you got to learn how to use the appropriate, tools like Grammarly and ChatGPT and things like that. You just have to be able to write well. So if they don't write at least at a minimum certain level, they get a 0. They can revise that assignment up to 2 times. If they get it right the first time, they get 100%. They've got an additional 2 weeks to get an 80%, which is still an A-. They got an additional 2 weeks to get a 60%, which is still a C-. But if they get it wrong all 3 times, they get a 0. And there's lots of support systems at our university, and I'm lots of stakeholder coordination with the support services of the university. Here's some of the topics that I cover. I talk a lot about change and the need for entrepreneurship to be able to adapt to change. I talk about the fact that they're going to be looking for a new job probably every 3 years for the entire rest of their lives on average, which means that the average 20-year-old goes to at least 20 to 25 different jobs over the course of their lives. So this having a gig and a side hustle and a change-making project on top of your job becomes kind of a core part of building your ikigai or building your career. I talk about the importance of startups. I talk about planning versus searching, mindfulness journaling. I talk about that stuff. Business model U and the business model canvas are kind of sort of core kind of cognitive aspects of this course. I talk about bird in the hand. Some of these are learning outcomes kind of imposed through our accreditation system, like the stages of business and the company life cycle. That kind of comes out of our accreditation requirements. I talk a little bit about business planning and strategy before talking about design thinking and lean startup. So I talk about both sides. I talk about both the planning side as well as the search-based side. Goal setting, habit formation, and time management. And then finally, I've got a couple of chapters on anxiety, depression, and cognitive therapy, and how to build sources of happiness and well-being. So those are the primary kind of modules and topics in the course. Here's the 8 major assignments. The first one is just a pretty simple email, but it's all about like find the role model, find an important person, and demonstrate that you can write an email properly. Then there's a future visioning exercise. I've used this one in the past a lot to say, who do you want to become over the next 4 years? And not a single student says, I'm going to learn how to be a free rider. I'm going to get D- in every course. I'm going to try to do as little as possible. I'm going to never join a student club. I'm going to have absolutely nothing to say on my resume other than the fact that I got some degree. They all say positive things about their grades and about what they're going to do. And I think that that sets them off on a good goal setting thing. I think students lose that sense of ambition over the years and they start settling for like doing as little as possible. I have two assignments related to the business model U Canvas. The first one is a purpose statement, which is what do you love doing for who? Just 3 of the 9 elements. Then there's a video pitch of their unique selling proposition. Basically, what's my human capital? What's my unique skill? What's my sustainable competitive advantage? What's that stuff? What's that part of my ikigai that I love to do and I'm amazing at? They have to go to a couple of networking events and document their active listening skill development practice that they do. I have a lot of focus on conscious practice, and so go out there and consciously practice your active listening. Of course, I've got to have a self-reflection exercise. That's kind of, a big, important pedagogical tool in almost every entrepreneurship class is self-reflection. But it's a self-reflection using the Gibbs cycle on, how have you built the entrepreneurial attitude of proactivity? How have you built the entrepreneurial attitude of curiosity? How have you built the entrepreneurial attitude of growth mindset? How have you built the entrepreneurial attitude of internal locus of control? Then they've got a public speaking event about something that they care about and find important. And then finally, a business model U report. Okay. I see there's a bunch of stuff in the chat. Haven't been paying any attention.
The links to your publications.
Okay, I don't see any questions in here. Sorry, did you ask me for a link to the publication?
No, we shared the link.
Okay. Okay, great. Let me show you a little bit about the course itself. So what I'm showing you now is, so this isn't exactly how the students are going to see it. So I'm in what's called the Rise 360 authoring tools from within the Articulate Storyline learning platform. This is the content creation side. These get exported as a SCORM object, which gets imported back into the learning management system of my university, which is called D2L. And so the student experience will be a little bit different than this. The students have to do all the content. When you're in the authoring tools, you can kind of sort of skip around without doing everything. And so I'm showing you this from the authoring side of things, just because it's easier. So for example, this is week 3 as I'm introducing the business model U. So it starts with the review of previous weeks. Here's a simple interactive learning object. So is this something to do with the head, the heart, or the hand? So memorizing, let's see. Oh, that's based on knowledge. Writing is a skill. Building a website is a skill. Lean startup methods is knowledge. Communication is a skill. Self-efficacy is an attitude. Self-esteem is an attitude. Hypothesis testing. That sounds like a skill. Yeah, I got that one right. Resiliency, that's an attitude. Adaptability is an attitude. Resource acquisition is a skill. Teamwork is a skill. You get the idea. So we've got these interactive kind of sort of things you can do. Here's another one. Is this planning-based left side or search discovery on the right side? So effectuation is search. Control all aspects is business planning. Pivot or persevere, that's search. Imagine a future goal, then figure out what actions you need. Oh, that's the business planning. That's causal logic, mostly taught in these programs. Experiential step. Oh, that's this one. Starting where you are, that's the bird in the hand principle. So you can see we've got these interactive things that students can play with in this environment. Looks pretty. It's a nice platform for writing content. You can insert images. It looks nice. You can embed these videos right in the
Hey everybody,
right in the
it's
thing.
Tim with Business Model U.
You can track that they're seeing these videos in real time. You can have these interactives like what's this one? Match the 9 business model elements. Okay, how customers will know you. That looks like distribution channels. How you interact. Oh, that's customer relationships. Who you help. That's customers. What you get. Revenue. What you give. Those are costs. Who helps you? Those are partners. Anyway, you get the idea. You put all these things together and then you submit it and it tells you if you're right or wrong. So here's this little section on, personality. We used to use ink blots, watch a couple of videos, here's some more information about the big 5. A couple more interactives, take a few personality tests, so go click on these things to go to some tests. And then, ask questions like, how many tests did you complete? Like the big I there looking at them. There's been research that shows if you have an I, people tend not to cheat as much. So I've got this I, how many tests did you find? And then I try to also weave in resources from the university. So, for help with assignments 2 and 3, read these things from the Business Career Hub. And so like I try to integrate kind of content from, we've got all these support staff at our university that students kind of just ignore. And so, you can, here's something from the university about the importance of knowing your strengths and how do you identify your strengths and how do you leverage your strengths. And so there's all this content from the university that I try to pull into the course. So I think those are some of the major things that I wanted to just demo within that. So we've tried to leave at least 10 minutes. Any questions or comments or anything else you'd like to know or talk about?
What is your favorite exercise for yourself based on your teaching experience?
Well, there's kind of several different questions in there. I would say I've personally read over 300 books on goal setting, and I've been following goal setting methods for much of my life. And some of the most difficult goals have been related to things like, how do you not get mad at other drivers when you're driving your car in downtown Toronto that's full of lunatics and crazy people who, cut you off and drive like their heads are on fire? And, kind of learning how to not just set goals for doing things, but different kinds of goals. You could have a goal for, I want a big sailboat when I grow up, versus I want goals to be a better person, versus goals that are really more like habit formation. So, I've got a section in the course related to, there's certain kind of goals setting techniques that are good for these kinds of things, but there's different series and methodologies of goals or habit formation for other kinds of things. And so, I've found positive self-talk to be a really important aspect of changing your beliefs. And that's, kind of like reminding yourself of, who you want to be. So as an example, I give students some examples of, there we go. I give students some examples of some of my own self-talk statements. So, I try to start each little lesson. So let me stop here. So each week is composed of a bunch of lessons combined with a quiz and usually some bonus videos. And so for each lesson, I try to start with some kind of an inspirational phrase and a pretty picture, some content, a couple of videos, and then usually some kind of an interactive or something like that. And I, again, try to have it to be very visually stimulating. So a lot of these positive self-talk things, I had to learn on my own. But, here's a few self-talk statements that I created for myself. So, I turn off the noise and focus on the person I'm speaking with. So often people come up to you in the hallway and they're like, "Oh, Professor Gedeon, blah, 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 blah." And you're busy, you're distracted. And you got to kind of learn to just say, you know what, forget about what was going through my head, turn it all off and entirely focus on what's going on with this person. Because you never know when you've got the opportunity to change somebody's life. And I've had cases where 10 years later, some student comes up to me. He's like, "Oh, Professor Gedeon, you changed my life. There was this day I ran into you in the hallway and I asked you this and you said this. And then I asked this and you said this. And oh, it just totally changed everything." And they shake my hand and they walk away. And I think, I have no idea who you are. I have no recollection at all about that event. And thank God I was on when you needed me to be on. Because most students don't learn anything in the classroom. Like they sit there and it kind of sort of washes over them. And on those rare occasions when they come to you saying, "Professor Gedeon, I want to learn something. I want to give you an opportunity to change my life." That's when you've got a chance to reach them. And that's when you need to pay attention. And so like that, I thought that was a really important one for me to have, just to kind of sort of like the moment I walk onto campus, I take my headphones off. I say, I'm a professor. And every single person I'm going to see for the next several hours is a possible chance to interact with and change somebody's life for the better. And so like, pay attention, like be on, like always be on. I can't change the wind, but I can adjust my sails. Like, some stuff you just got to roll with the punches. Sometimes you just kind of have to make stuff, again, you can't change things. This is kind of sort of the pilot and the plane principle. You can't change the world around you, but you can change yourself. Sometimes I get discouraged. Sometimes I think, oh, these students, they barely show up. They don't buy the book. They barely, you can barely get them to pay attention. And I have to remind myself, you can't reach everybody, but I do meaningful work. What I do matters. I've got another one. I didn't want to put it up here, but I'll tell it to you just because sometimes you might have to hear this. This has become an important one for me recently. One of my positive self-talk statements is, sometimes your child will scream at you, "I hate you, Daddy." But you have to love your children anyway. And sometimes students, they get a failing grade and they scream to the authority figures, "Steve Gedeon's a dirty, rotten, horrible scoundrel. He's horrible. He hates me." And they just scream and they post mean things. They run to any authority figure and they appeal their grade. And, sometimes your little daughter is going to scream at you, "I hate you." And you have to still love your little daughter. And some of our students are still children. They may be in an adult's body, but they've been raised as children. They think of themselves as children. They think of themselves in childlike ways. They're fragile. They're delicate. They need trigger warnings. They're easily offended. They're desperate for attention and positive support. And if you say they're not a little special little snowflake, they hate it. And they lie. And they lie. And they lie. And then they'll go to everybody else and lie. And it happens every day, and it's getting worse. Read any newspaper about what's happening in American campuses these days, and it's all come to Canada. It's all come to Canada. The whole, well, I'll stop there. I'll just stop there, but it's all come to Canada. Yes.
Okay. It is like usual, a pleasure to listen to you, Steve. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alva.
Yeah, and I especially wanted to emphasize that I was very touched by your introduction and what your last words repeated it when you spoke about the mental health crisis. In fact, you're the only person I met within the last years who has the same, kind of alarm ringing. Yeah, because it's the same with me, and the figures are not that bad in Germany, but they are going down. We also have this problem of that they have to take medicine in an age where you should enjoy your youth. Yeah, so that was very touching, and I think that the idea that you integrate supporting strategies into your lesson or into the course design is excellent. On the one hand, because it's a good opportunity, because they have to go through it anyway. Yeah. On the other hand, it's good because it comes natural for them. So they can learn something or take something with them. Because many of them won't go to a doctor or a psychiatrist, a therapist, so because they don't even know that they have a problem. So I think that you do really, this is an excellent thing that you do now for the students. And I have two questions, in fact. Do you monitor students' mental well-being during the course by, for example, letting them fill in some tests or so? That was my first question.
That's, I have to say, Angela, I've really struggled with that.
Yeah.
I'm partly because if I am measuring this, do I have an obligation of some sort to report, to intervene? Am I making myself liable to, you knew that 10% of your students were suffering from depression and you, whatever. Even talking about these subjects, I am exposing myself to tremendous criticism. Who are you to do this? Yeah. You're not a certified mental health professional. Even asking the question can trigger an episode. So am I triggering students by telling them what the facts are? Even having like that scale, like from worthless to self-esteem, even exposing them to that idea and asking them to put an X where they think they are and where they'd like to be could stimulate trauma. And so I don't know what I'm going to do. I really don't. This is one of the things that's been bothering me consistently for 9 months now. Yeah. And no one's given me any help. Whenever I talk to anybody, no one gives me advice. Everyone's happy to criticize after you've done something and they don't like it, but no one is willing to say anything.
No one wants to take responsibility. I completely understand. I think that people know what happens, but no one wants to take responsibility.
Yeah. So I'm very interested in doing this. I'm going to be collecting data,
Yeah.
whether I want to be or not, just because I have to give in-class grades. And when you've got 500 students in a room, like I'm using the Poll Everywhere in-class engagement platform. I'm ripping my hair out over the technology. So eventually I want to tie this into my research. Eventually I want ethics approval. Eventually I want to do all that things. I don't think I'm going to have it ready for the fall. You said you had 2 questions?
My second question is, do you know any survey where we can test entrepreneurial mindset?
No.
No. Okay.
Nope. Okay. I want to build one. I want to develop one.
Yeah.
I'll note that Bettina and Barbara sent something out, and I think you were the third one on that.
We talked about
so
it.
I know that. Yeah. So I'm very interested in this. The trouble with any scale is that it's almost impossible to publish a new scale without a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like if you say, oh, I've got this new scale, and you just pick 1 from here and 2 from here and 5 from here and 8 from there, it's unpublishable. Nobody cares what your opinion is. And it doesn't matter if it's a good idea or a bad idea. And so you gotta do like all the work, like, why are you doing this? What model are you tying into? And so what I'm trying to do here is kind of set the ground rule for like, why those 5 beliefs? Who do you think you are to come up with 5 beliefs? I'm like, why? And you're not allowed to come up with anything. Like, it all has to be based on other people's stuff. So yes, I'm interested in that. I don't have time to deal with it right now, but it's a big issue. I want to do that. I'm very interested in scale development. You can even see I've got a couple of kind of like quasi scales I'm embedded in. So yeah, it's all coming, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Mikhail.
Yes, thank you, Gideon. First of all, I have to appreciate what you just did. Amazing presentation. And I even more loved your passion on it. I think you don't really need any tools like laser pens or fog machines. I think that was just perfect. I also got 2 very quick small questions. First of all, I would be curious, how much time do your students spend around your lecture?
In theory, they have 1 hour designated for going through the asynchronous content in Articulate Storyline. So I tried for each of those weeks, I tried to keep that week around 1 hour of time. So there's it's probably going to take them more like 1 hour and 15 minutes to do each one, because there's about 45 minutes to 50 minutes of just video content alone in each of those weeks. So 1 hour of asynchronous, that's why it's a blended learning class. 1 hour in the big room with me, pretending to be Tony Robbins, and and then 1 hour in the small sections of 45 students. So what I'm saying to my students is, normally in a class, you're supposed to read the book. Let's say that's 1 hour, and then go to 3 hours of class, and then do 1 hour of homework. So normally most classes are 5 hours. My reading of the book is included in those 3 hours. And so I'm saying you should spend 2 hours doing fun things. You should designate 2 hours a week to join a student club, go to a talk, get a badge of some sort, learn a coding skill. And so that's what I'm expecting, is they'll spend those 3 hours with my stuff and my content, but then 2 hours going out engaging in the university's ecosystem and gaining TED points. They might or might not do it.
So help me with the math. Like, in total, how many hours will
5
students? 5 a day, or
per week?
Per week.
Yeah.
Okay. And 6 weeks, you say, in total?
13 weeks.
13. Okay. All right.
I think that's pretty standard for almost every course in North America these days. They're on the semester system. The semesters of 13 weeks. I think that's pretty standard. I think that each course is normally what's called, like, I guess it'd be like three credits. That means like 3 in-class hours. Some engineering ones will have 3 in-class hours and then 3 lab hours. And that would be a 6-hour class. But most business classes, liberal electives are 3 hours.
I see.
In class.
And regarding the tool you're using, was it RISE? Is it an open tool, or is it a tool specific to your university?
So it's called
Possibly.
Articulate. So Articulate Storyline is the name of the platform. And there are 2 different sets of authoring tools. The simplified tools are called RISE 360, RISE 360. I don't know what the more complicated tools are called, but it involves coding. Like, there's a form of coding, probably scripting would be my guess, or object-oriented scripting. And then you can either publish that as a PDF, which is crazy because you lose all the interactivity, you lose all it's ugly. Or you could publish it as a Web 3.0, but then you have to have your own website that you maintain to publish it on. Or you publish it as what's called a SCORM object, which gets imported into your university's learning management system. So so there's a bunch of them, like Moodle is an LMS, D2L, WebCT, Blackboard, like these are all Joomla, Drupal, these are all LMSs. My university's is called D2L, Design to Learn. It's also called Brightspace, I think you might have heard it called. I don't know. I think Hochschule München uses Moodle. I've no idea what the integration. I'm not sure if Moodle is SCORM compliant or not. No idea. But it doesn't have to be SCORM compliant. I need SCORM compliance because I want to monitor behaviors of the students. I want to look at click-through rates. I want to look at like quiz scores. I want to look at completion rates. And so you need that SCORM compliance to be able to track behaviors in the system. And I doubt I'm not really sure if Moodle does that or not.
Thanks a lot, Gedeon.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Steve, is there something you would like to get particular feedback on, or are you looking for something?
I would say I have gotten so much feedback it would make you go bald. I have spoken with so many people, and everyone has an opinion. And I don't need any more opinions necessarily. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm happy if you've got opinions. But I'm at this point in time, I've got my head down. I'm just trying to get everything working. The content is completed, but like getting all the technology to work, getting so for example, like they can't see the assignment until they've done all the reading. And they can't see next week's until they've completed this week's. And so like there's kind of this delicate, contingency. You got to do week 1 before you do week 2, before you do week 3, before you do week 4. I've been criticized heavily for that. Students should be able to kind of sort of come and go and do whatever they want. And I've said, I'm sorry, knowledge is hierarchical. That's just the fact of reality. That's why I'm the professor, not you. This is a carefully structured course with pedagogy and knowledge hierarchy. You can't understand week 5 if you haven't read week 4. And no, I don't accept students just picking and choosing whatever that pops into their head. You don't like it, write your own course. I said, thank you, Georg. I was a little nicer than that, but that was the message underneath. It was like, thank you very much. I appreciate your criticism.
Can we volunteer as, or can we audit your class?
So this is an important point. I am releasing all of this as an open educational resource. So when it's done, I'm going to make this freely available to you. Any of you can steal anything you want, absolutely free at any time. There's no copyright involvement. I think you have an obligation, to give credit, but like all the interactive learning objects, I'm going to make freely available. All the quizzes, all the content, all the images, like it's all going to be freely available. And I'm going to be releasing it through an open educational resource. I've made that commitment for my entrepreneurial career and life design book as well. But the library has been just slow over like, where'd this image come from? And we want a letter of permission from Bettina that there's a photograph of her on page 89. See that little dot that looks kind of, who is that? Is that Bettina? I want a letter of permission from her. I'm like, oh my God. And when you've got 500 images, like it just never ends. So I don't know when I will be releasing it as an OER. And I kind of want to go through a pilot launch anyway.
So I would have
I don't want
another
to trigger anybody.
A wish. So besides having a look in more detail and reading through the material, I would like to ask you already to have in mind, it would be wonderful having your lessons learned after the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
That
Sure.
would be great that you let us know how it worked and what your feeling is. Because
well, I will say this is one reason why I'm adding mindfulness meditations into my big lecture halls, because I have to admit I'm a little bit nervous about trying to keep 500 kids fresh out of high school, like literally right out of high school. And there's a lot of misbehaviors in our high school, and there's a lot of, I'm a little bit nervous about having 500 kids in a room playing on their phones, typing on their computers, talking in the back, making noise, and kind of being disruptive. In the past, when I've done 500 person audiences, I think I've been able to manage through the force of my will and the power of my charisma. But I don't know if that's still going to work with these days. And so I've added the mindfulness meditation just to get them to be quiet for 5 minutes, and then to hopefully kind of sort of like get their goldfish minds or monkey brains or whatever, just get them to calm down just that little bit and to be a little more aware of their presence. But I've had to learn how to do mindfulness, and I've had to learn how to do mindfulness guided meditations, and I've got 30 different people giving me their opinions on how to do mindfulness. And so that's been a thing as well too. Yes, Barbara.
Hey, Steve, first, thank you very much. It's very inspiring listening to you. And we were talking today about entrepreneurial life design, and I would say this is exactly what you are doing, connecting entrepreneurship with life design, and it's such a great example. So one thing, what I was just thinking about when you were saying, like, you have so many people and how can you control them? So one thing would be great if you could have with each of them, like a personal coaching session, yeah? So like to collect, so if they're like on the right track or not. But
you're trying to kill me, Barbara. That would be 3,000 individual meetings a year. I can't do it.
But what I'm doing in my workshops, and perhaps you have thought about it, I don't know, is to build teams, smaller teams, so that they connect, that they connect with themselves and they help themselves if they are like on a wrong track, or if so, that you have like teams of 4 or 5 people working together. Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I definitely have thought about that. Teamwork is one of those things that every large class tends to integrate because it cuts down on the grading. If you've got 2,000 people and you put them in teams of 5, suddenly you've only got 400 things to grade rather than 2,000 things to grade. At this age, most teams are dysfunctional. There's almost always one free rider that takes advantage of the other students. And I think students learn a lot of really horrible behaviors in their early teamwork classes. And so I decided not to embed any team-based components in this thing. They do meet in their TED Packs of 45, and they have a separate instructor for that. So, oh, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. All grades are issued in that 45-person group, which means I don't have any grading. Like, I'm responsible for the grading in Articulate Storyline. I'm responsible for the grading in my large thing. But all like final grades, appeals, all that, oh, Professor so-and-so is horrible because they gave me a bad grade. All of that miraculously goes away. I don't have any of that level of anxiety over final grades. So I'm particularly proud of that brilliant design strategy in this class. What I am planning on doing is doing a lot of like talk to your neighbor type of thing. Like, so like after a mindfulness meditation, I'll ask a question. Why was that so hard to focus on your breathing for more than 30 seconds at a time? Why is it that like your mind kept throwing up all these things? Talk to your neighbor and discuss what your experience was about this. So I am planning on doing like a lot of parent share kind of things, with the sharing being done through the platform is called Poll Everywhere. Still climbing that learning curve. I think that like all new technologies, that's a little buggy. I've got some anxiety over that. But yeah, I've decided not to do any team-based things. It's a good idea. It certainly was high on my agenda for a long time, and I decided no, I consciously decided not to do that. And yes, there's Poll Everywhere as the software. I don't know if I can recommend it or not. All I know is I've got a license for it.
I also think the sharing part is wonderful for multiple reasons, that they can really talk and share and get to know others. Because when you're a newcomer and you're in a big university, often you feel lost. And I think the social part is a wonderful element, also to experience that you're not alone. That was something we recognized in our small groups. We just had 17 people, that they said they have similar challenges than I have. I'm not alone. And I think especially for new students, this is really, really important. And I know that the mindfulness to calm them down, I would love to hear. Just one thing, no comment, just an idea what Barbara did, and I love that too, a walking meditation, because some people are good in moving, and yeah, for next time.
So this is a structural thing that my university did, that we created these TED Packs. So all incoming first-year students are assigned into a team of 45. They have all of their classes with that same group of 45, although usually it'll be like 7 TED Packs in a room. but at least you'll know 44 students in each room that you go into. And they do have social events and a leader for each of these 45 person things. Yeah, I haven't decided whether to do a walking meditation or not. Probably not, partly because I still view myself as a rookie at this. I've never done a guided meditation before. I'm feeling some level of and the people that said, "Oh, don't worry, I'm going to train you." Basically, my training consisted of, "You're uncomfortable? Good. Let your students know that you're uncomfortable. You'll be fine." I'm like, "Thank you." That was my Teach the Teacher program. Thank you. Oh, well, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. There you go. That's your training. I'm like, wow, golly gee. Glad you didn't teach me how to teach entrepreneurship with an attitude like that. I'm not familiar with Slido. Never heard of it before. Slido.
It's Slido is like really, really useful. I use it with a lot of entrepreneurs actually, and you can create polls and interactions, and you can also collect the data at the end. So you can also like maybe for everyone who wants to share their key emotional challenge, and then you can like word clouds, or it could be also ratings, and it's really, really useful and easy.
Okay. I'm going to be using Poll Everywhere. That was it's the largest business school in Canada. We have a lot of 2,000 student courses. This will be the largest entrepreneurship one. And this course is going to grow to become larger than any of the other ones, because it's going to be embraced by a wider selection of programs across campus. So this will be the biggest in our university. It's going to start on day one being the largest entrepreneurship course in the world. But we've been trying clickers, and we've got teams of people that kind of help make those decisions. They pick Poll Everywhere. I don't know if it's better or worse than Slido, but they paid for the site license, and we're paying like $20,000 a year for the site license. So I decided to just do that. I do have some staff support to help with Poll Everywhere. But again, there's a steep learning curve. there's a lot to be done, and there's a lot to be done to kind of sort of, and of course I've got a Mac at home and a PC in the classroom, and that really buggers everything up as well too. Having those two different platforms really screws everything up. So yeah, I've got, even once the content's done, I still have a lot of kind of last minute things to kind of figure out. But at the end of the day, it'll all work out, as long as the students are happy, it'll work out. But thank you for the Slido comment. Anything else?
Talking about happiness, maybe just very quickly, I'd like to share a thought. I recently made some experiments with beginning the class with micro moments of resonance, which is a term created from Barbara Fredrickson, who is also well known for the upward spiral. So starting every lesson with something, what was good already today, or setting the students on a positive path. If they think about something positive, if they hear and listen to other people telling something positive, I think that can make a big impact on their mental well-being.
It reminds me a little bit on the gratitude exercise, that you appreciate what's good. I love it.
Yeah, and this is something I really want to experiment more with, because I have an idea what micro moments of resonance mean, but I haven't found a lot of content there. But I think this could be worthwhile to dig deeper. So maybe
I love it. That's a great suggestion. I think that you're absolutely right. You can kind of sort of prime students to think in certain ways by just asking questions at the beginning. So who here today is glad that they didn't have a bomb drop on their house like happened in Kiev yesterday? Oh, and then the next question is like, so how, are you glad that you're here in class today rather than like working in a child labor, camp somewhere, or like, waking up in a refugee camp somewhere? Like, yeah, I'm kind of like, okay, maybe this class won't suck as badly as you thought it was going to now. It kind of sort of makes some of those unhappiness things. I think you're absolutely right. Like you set the tone like right off the very beginning. And I thought about trying to find questions that would kind of engage with opportunity spotting and looking out for like user-centric problems and needs. Like, how was your subway experience on the way here? What was good about it? What was a highlight about your subway experience? And what would you like to redesign to make it better? Did you see a disabled person that like struggled with, their wheelchair, or did you see somebody, struggle with their child? So to kind of get them in this user-centric kind of ways of thinking, and to kind of just make them more, I guess the word is mindful, kind of mindful of just their own experience of things. that I think so many students, like, they walk around with this thing in front of their face and they're totally oblivious to everything else. And they can't even get through a classroom without like, something's out there. And to be like, just like, pay attention to the posters on the wall, pay attention to the beauty around you, pay attention to the human-centric needs about things. But, you know, you might be right that that kind of sort of focuses on problems, but maybe focusing on, you know, not just problems that can be solved, but also on something really well that happened. Like, what was a delightful, you know, can anybody share, you turn to your neighbor and share for 3 minutes a delightful customer experience you had in the last week? And what made that so wonderful? But I like that. That's a good way to get them primed for thinking in positive ways. I do try to do that in the articulate storyline thing by asking questions around, like, you know, before you start, are you enthusiastic about doing what you're doing right now? I mean, I know you're doing it because you have to do it because it's part of the class, but like, are you enthusiastic about it? Do you want to be more enthusiastic about it? Are you happy right now? Would you rather be happier? Like, what would need to change for you to be more engaged right now? I don't know. They'll probably skip right over it, half of them. Georg, I did want to say again, your System 1, System 2 stuff, I've been using executive and elephant. So I talk about the elephant and the executive all the time. Like, you got to train your elephant. Don't believe your elephant. Turn your System 2 executive reasoning on and make a conscious decision about what you want to train your elephant to do. So, so I've been using. I know you use Homer Simpson.
Thank you very much.
Elephant.
Thank you very much. Glad to hear.
Thanks. I've got lots of pictures of elephants. I've got lots of, and you might have even seen it on one of my things. I had like the little elephant in the middle. So like that System 2, System 1 thing, fast and slow thinking. I think that's kind of a major theme that I pick up on kind of over and over and over again.
Yeah, it helps a lot to understand what we are doing and what we try to create and build up in the students.
I was afraid that 4 boxes was too much for them. Green, yellow, blue, and red. I'm like, I think I'm going to stick to System 1 and 2. When you got to the 4 boxes, I thought that was beyond my first-year students' capabilities.
But I replaced that by pictures now. So the yellow room is, yeah. I replaced that because I've seen that many people have struggled with it. You know, they say, could we please come back to the colors? And then I say, green room means that, blue means that, and so on and so on. So I try to improve.
Maybe once you've simplified it, I can take it for next year.
Yeah, I can send you. I'm just about to prepare. I'm just about to prepare a presentation for Wednesday evening about creativity and where the creativity is in our brain, where the system is that steers the creativity and enables us to be creative out of our own resources. And therefore, I really overdone the presentation. I will send you.
Yeah, well, maybe when you're done with it on Wednesday, if you could send me a copy, that would be great. I have 2 modules on creativity and visualization exercises. And as of today, it's all entirely external. I've got like a couple of books, one by Jeffrey Stamp, well, he didn't write a book, but he taught a course that I took. But I just ran out of time. I'm like, I don't have anything on creativity. I found stuff online. Sorry, Barbara, you got your hand up? You're muted.
We don't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, I still have to go back to this measurement. Yeah. So when I follow your argumentation, you say the people have a health issue, and entrepreneurship can help them solve their health issue to have more well-being. But I think it's more than well-being. Yeah, they have more well-being. So like to cope with the change and with the world. Yeah, but with these entrepreneurial tools, they also learn to see potential opportunities and have better ideas for the future. And they get the tools how to realize them for their own life or for others. So that there are different steps. And I think well-being is just the fundament you need to have then the power and the energy and the motivation to then go on to have new ideas and then to make your life a better life, but then make the world a better world. Yeah? So, and it's just a hypothesis, and I believe in that this entrepreneurial mindset and the tools what we are talking about can help empower the people. But how can we measure that?
So I think it's very important that I say this very clearly. I do not at any time ever say that an entrepreneurial mindset will help you relieve depression and anxiety. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a licensed medical practitioner. I'm not offering medical advice. So, you know, if you suffer from anxiety and depression, the tool for that is cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm not a professional at that. If they choose to build a positive set of values, I think that will put them on a path towards happiness and well-being. But I actually went back at the very beginning of my thing and reread every single sentence in this entire 560 pages of PDF stuff. I'm not a therapist, so I try to be very careful in the way that I phrase things. But I think you jump to a conclusion that's pretty obvious, and I agree with your conclusion that if you do these things, you will be happier and have greater well-being. But correlation is not causation, right? Like they're correlated with happiness and well-being, but I'm not saying that doing the stuff I tell you to do will cause happiness and well-being, and I try to be pretty careful about that.
But this was
I think it's almost impossible.
You started with mental health crisis, and your course is something you offer for that, or not? This was the argument.
Well, I'm making them aware of the therapies that are available. I'm making them aware of the negative beliefs that cause these things. I'm making them aware of how to implement cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm showing them videos from cognitive behavioral therapist experts. But I've tried to be careful in saying, this is not, don't call me Dr. Happiness. Like, this is not a course on happiness. This is a course on entrepreneurship. I think that these things also lead to these things, but I'm careful about claiming that, or at least I try to be. And maybe I was a bit sloppy in today. Maybe I need to go back and look at this presentation, because I just don't want anybody to claim that I'm giving mental health advice to my students.
Natasha shared it in the chat, and I think you should have a look on it too.
Yep.
Talked about students, but that is, and I hope Natasha can give a talk about her startup, which address the mental well-being of founders.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe it just because it was just released in April 2023, and it's I talked to more than 400 founders, and there's a lot of interesting data about their mental health and well-being, and also the main stress factors and the personality traits, or at least their tendencies, and it might be really useful for your course as well.
Yeah, so I do have a little bit of content, not much, because the course is not about starting up a business. Actually, it's about thinking being entrepreneurial. What I say is, because wealth and success has such a limited effect on happiness and well-being, probably doesn't really make a difference whether your startup is successful or not. What's important is the resiliency you develop as a result of having gone through the experience. Because like the financial rewards of a successful or a failure kind of are irrelevant. So that's one reason why, like, have a bunch of startups, have a bunch of side hustles, have a bunch of social change making projects. Most of them will fail. That's okay. The point is to build resiliency and anti-fragility. And I agree, going through, like, I've been a founder, I've founded a bunch of companies. It's way too stressful. That's why I'm a professor. My doctor basically said, you have to stop doing this. It's going to kill you. You need to retire. Like 20 years ago, I was told I had to retire. And so I became a professor instead.
I look a little bit on the time because the 1.5 hour is gone.
Yeah, I do. Just before you cut off, I just want to quick finish of Barbara's last thing. Barbara, yeah. I'm afraid that I do not believe it is possible to measure a sustainable, positive impact on almost anything to do with my students as a result of one course. These are long-term effects that they have to think about and play with, and there's lots of other causes in their life. So, yeah, I want to measure these things, but I'm deeply suspicious of any of these measurements. And I've been measuring entrepreneurial self-efficacy with a longitudinal study for 5 years. And unfortunately, I'm afraid my results are almost unpublishable, even though it's probably the most robust, valid, and reliable database on the face of the planet. If you don't show a big causation, reviewers reject it. And so I don't like wasting my time on low probability papers and B-League journals. And so I just decided I may never publish any of that stuff, just because, you know, if you can't show, and I had my students for 4 semesters in a row, and I measured them over a 4-year period. And anyway, I'll stop there. Back to you, Bettina. You were just closing off your...
No, it is there any final word you would like to say? Because it was wonderful listening to you, and we learned a lot, and I appreciate, as Michael pointed out so wonderfully, so your passion about the topic and not just the skills you have and the experience.
Well, I will say, I think I've finally found my ikigai. I think I've finally found something that the world needs, that I'm good at, that I get paid well for, and that gives me meaning and happiness in my life, and that I'm selfishly benefiting from every book that I read. I'm not selfishly benefiting from beating myself up against the technology and the scalability and some of the stakeholder engagement and that kind of stuff. But like, I've really, really, really enjoyed devoting so much of my life in the last year to like reading all these books about active listening and happiness and flourishing and, you know, how the brain works and system 1 versus system 2 and mindfulness. I have an active mindfulness practice now that I've kind of sort of started and stopped over the years. I'm kind of sort of back on track again with that. So I legitimately hope that this class is making me a better human being. And boy, if it helps a few students, then that's good enough.
Awesome. Maybe we should do a book sharing session. What are our favorite books? I would love to hear more about your favorite books. But for today, thank you so much for your presentation. We taped it, we share it. The next will be on June 19th. So 4 weeks from now at 5 o'clock, we're sharing the invite as soon the tape of Steve is uploaded. We will talk about Euram. And we're still looking for someone who would love to talk, share something in July. Maybe Michael, maybe Natasha, please feel free to propose something. We would love to hear more about you. And maybe if it's interesting for the community here, creativity, because there is a link between creativity and perceived happiness in life. Maybe we should consider having a happiness creativity session. If you're interested, I would be interested. I had a class on that too, and maybe we can just share about our experience with creativity. Georg already shared it. You would be in.
No, I just wanted to say, creativity, I could find no correlation between creativity and happiness. It's one of the only ones that creativity and curiosity do not tie to happiness. All the other attitudes do. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 that didn't. At least I could find no evidence for it. So I'm very interested in creativity. It's part of the class. It's part of entrepreneurship, but I don't know that it leads to happiness. I have no, that wasn't one of the ones that was correlated.
I just found that.
Sorry to be so picky.
Yeah, so I haven't read it yet. Being creative makes you happier.
Okay, well, there we go.
Of creativity on subjective.
Ah, perfect. They all lead to happiness. I love it. Thank you. I'm glad I said something. They all lead to happiness. How about, I should just type in curiosity and happiness. Does curiosity lead to happiness? Then I'm like, now they all lead to happiness. There we go. Maybe I should go into therapy.
So
become a therapist. Not go into therapy. I should become a therapist.
I just stop